Welcome, everybody. It's your boy, the Versace Stoner, with another episode of VSW. Thank you. Last night we were talking WrestleMania 1. Tonight we are talking WrestleMania 2. 40,085 people in attendance. 1986 at the Nassau Coliseum in New York, the Rosemont Horizon Center in Illinois, and Los Angeles Memorial Sports Arena in Los Angeles, California. It took place in 3 different arenas to make one event. It had a tremendous card, and it's probably one of my favorite WrestleManias of all time. One was a great spectacle. Madison Square Garden, 1985, it put WWF, or now WWE, on the map. Great. You got fans, you got people hooked. But WrestleMania 2 is where the substance came in. The storylines progressed. The matches got a little bit better. The characters got more colorful. We saw more of the people that we wanted to see as they became household names. I'll go through the card and all of that, and a great card it was. And it also had, more celebrities. More people came out. You had Smokin' Joe Frazier there, Elvira. You had a bunch of other people in the Battle Royal. Ray Charles was there, He did the America the Beautiful, and he did a great job. Having these stars come out and be part of wrestling is really what brings it up. They might say, it's a celebrity grab and it just whatever, but it brings wrestling more into the light. The more that goes into wrestling, the more wrestling goes outward. And it's no different today, and it will be no different in the future. The more that, can be brought into the wrestling world, and the more people that can see it, the better it is for the wrestling world. And WrestleMania 2 did that. It brought more people to the game. You had Ricky the Dragon Steamboat defeating Hercules. 2 great wrestlers. Hercules, one of my favorite. I love his full Nelson. Okay, probably one of the best in the industry. And versing, the agile Ricky the Dragon. Ricky taking the win. But it was a great matchup between those two. It really, really showcased both. And Hercules' power really, really throws people for a loop. He's a powerhouse, but he was very technical. He could wrestle with the best of them. And Ricky is just Ricky. So, if you ever can go back and watch that match, I suggest it. I actually recommend watching all of Hercules' matches if you're a wrestling fan. He was just a great wrestler. You also had adorable Adrian Adonis with the mouth of the South Jimmy Hart in his corner, defeating Uncle Elmer. That was a fun match. Adrian Adonis was a fun wrestler. Did the whole kind of dress like a girl thing before it became popular. And Uncle Elmer was just another WWE fun character as well. We're still in the rock and roll era. We still had people like Haystacks Calhoun and George Steele and all these guys and characters that were just bigger than life. So it was a different time. When you hear these funny names of these wrestlers, you got to remember the times. Okay, you had Terry and Hoss Funk with the Jimmy the Hart again defeating Junkyard Dog and Tito Santana. The Funk Boys, they were great. Jimmy Hart again in the corner. That's what I miss most about the old school wrestling is the managers. These managers would manage 4 or 5 guys a night, tag teams or whatever. Some of them had their stable, like the Heenan family. They would come out, they would bring their guys, they would represent. It made the match more interesting, in my opinion. It brought more depth into it. It really just made wrestling. Now you don't really see managers. You don't see valets. You don't see anything really except Paul for Roman Reigns. Besides that, you don't have that. That's missing. That's missing in today's wrestling world. You had Mr. Wonderful versus the magnificent Don Morocco and Mr. Fuji. And this ended in a double countout. 2 great athletes, Paul Orndorff and Don Morocco, both tremendous. Both were playing good face and heels. As you remember, Paul Orndorff was a heel at the end of WrestleMania 1 when he teamed with Rowdy Piper. And now I believe it, by WrestleMania 2 he's face turned and magnificent Don Morocco was with the evil Mr. Fuji at the time. And they both got counted out. You also had Jake the Snake Roberts defeating George Wells. People underestimate those early Jake Roberts matches. They were great. He's another one of those tremendous wrestlers. Yeah, he had his personal problems, but let's keep that out of wrestling for right now. At this day and age, he was an entertainer, and he could entertain with the best of them all through the 80s and 90s. He did a tremendous job doing that. Things obviously progressed in his personal life that played impact the in roles that he had in the wrestling world, but at this time and era, he was still on top. Okay. So these were just some of the undercard matches. Then you had these bigger matches that took place, and these ones really just blew the socks. Like I said, this card was just incredible. You had the Intercontinental Championship match. Randy Macho Man Savage with Elizabeth defeating George the Animal Steele to retain the title. He had that whole beef with George Steele. George was after Elizabeth. He wanted Elizabeth. He used to bring her flowers and stuff, give her gifts. They had all this storyline going. George the Animal, one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. Great character, great wrestler, just green tongue, eat the turnbuckle. It's what wrestling should be. And then you had the great Randy Savage. One of the greatest if not the greatest intercontinental champion to live. I know they say that it's the Honky Tonk Man. Some say it's Shawn Michaels or Bret Hart, but I still think it's the Macho Man, Randy Savage. And this was a great match. He did retain the title. And I suggest you actually watch that, In the following year, he had probably one of the greatest matches of his career. But his WrestleMania 2 match was tremendous and awfully often underrated. Then we had this very interesting boxing match. And this is kind of a rematch from WrestleMania 1. You had Mr. T coming back with Joe Frazier in his corner and the Haiti Kid defeating Rowdy Piper with Cowboy Bob Orton. This was a boxing match. These people put on gloves, and it was boxing rules. Now, Mr. T won by disqualification when Rowdy Piper decided to take those gloves off and start to wrestle. But the beginning of it was pretty good. They had a good boxing matchup, and it was nice to see something different. I think this is when we started to see gimmick matches and different matches in wrestling, and it really opened up the world. And it kind of crossed the two together, too, the wrestling world and the boxing world. It brought them together once again. You had Muhammad Ali in the first WrestleMania. Now you had, Joe Frazier in number 2. It's solidifying wrestling as a sport. Now, these guys are coming out. They're boxing. And it was just, a tremendous sight to see. Mr. T, an amazing, like I said, he had the experience. He was coming off of, his Rocky 3 still as Clubber Lang. This is what he wanted to do. And it just, for me, this is one of probably my second favorite match of the pay-per-view was this boxing. I love the main event of it, the final main event, but this main event was probably my second favorite match. You had the women's championship match. Fabulous Moolah defeating Velvet McIntyre to become the new champion. Moolah was very dominant at that time. Stories came out later about the abuse and so forth, but at the time, she was dominant in the realm of women wrestling. I personally am not much of a fan. I was more of a Wendy Richter fan myself in the times, but let's move on to the next one. You had the flag match. Okay, Corporal Kirchner defeated Nikolai Volkov for Classy Freddie Blassie. Classic matchup. Corporal Kirchner, the Sergeant Slaughter before Slaughter came out, the Army gear and everything. And you have Nikolai Volkov, the USSR soldier, with Classy Freddie Blassie. It's a great matchup. United States versus Russia. It was Cold War times. It was good. It was good. These were the kind of things that wrestling would start to build towards in the future. You had later on Hogan versus Slaughter when we had a conflict in the Middle East. And Slaughter made a heel turn. That was later on in WrestleMania 7. But these kind of political events would start to shape wrestling and take hold and determine the storylines that would come to play in future wrestling to come. Okay. And then you had the WWE and NFL Battle Royal match. This was one of my favorite matches. Again, probably my third favorite match if I had to decide. Just because it brought together two worlds. It brought together the NFL and it brought together wrestling. You had Andre the Giant in it, Jimbo covered from the Chicago Bears, Pedro Morales, Tony Atlas, Teddy Arichi, Harvey Martin from the Dallas Cowboys, Dan Spivey, Hillbilly Jim, King Tonga, Iron Sheik, Ernie Holmes from the Pittsburgh Steelers, Big John Studd, B. Brian Blair, Jumpin' Jim Brunzell, Bill Fralick from the Atlantic Falcons, Bret Hitman Hart, Jim Manville Neihart, Russ Francis from San Francisco and 49ers, Bruin Sammartino, and finally William the Refrigerator Perry from the Chicago Bears, one of my all-time favorite NFL players. All these guys in the ring at once, going at it. The age of big man was raging. It was great. Andre the Giant actually winning that match, but wow. There was some teams in there and there was some people in there. And like I said, a battle royal, everybody starting off at the ring at the same time. Not like a Royal Rumble where they come in, every couple of minutes. Everybody's in there to begin with. And everybody just starts punching and doing their moves right when the bell starts. It's total chaos and pandemonium. Everybody getting thrown over the top. People flying every which direction. What a sight. You don't see it much anymore. You do once in a while. You'll have a battle royal, but you will never see it like that with those types of people and wrestlers. Like I said, the age of the big man is kind of gone. You don't have that anymore in wrestling, along with managers. But back then you did, and it was something. You also had the World Tag Team Championship match. The British Bulldogs, Dynamite Kid and Davey Boy Smith with Captain Lou Albano and Ozzy Osbourne defeating the Dream Team with Brutus Beefcake and Greg the Hammer Valentine with Luscious Jolly Valiant to become the new champions. And the British Bulldogs would, go on and to become one of the best tag teams out there. Davey Boy Smith, kind of the face of it, but Dynamite Kid was the powerhouse behind that tag team. A workhorse. And those two together would go on to become pretty successful to tag, and then Davey Boy Smith singles, and down the line, kind of related to Bret Hart. Tremendous athlete. I actually found a Davey Boy Smith WWE Elite figure from Series 82 Special Edition today when I was roaming the halls of Target. I had to pick it up. It came with Matilda, the bulldog that they used to bring to the ring. And this was a great tag team match. And Brutus Beefcake and Greg Valentine were world-class tag team champions and world-class tag team. Those two had great chemistry together. All four of them had great chemistry in this match. And then you finally had the final main event of the evening, the WWE Championship in a steel cage. Hulk Hogan defeating King Kong Bundy with Bobby the Brain Heenan. This is my favorite match of the pay-per-view. King Kong Bundy was a monster. He caused a wave of destruction in the WWF. You could see it. They showed it on the weeklies and everything building up to this match. The Avalanche, devastating maneuver. And he was huge. So to see Hogan, the underdog, face this monstrosity of a man, and then to throw it into a barbaric steel cage, it was just adrenaline overload. Hulkamania started to run wild. You had Bundy just looking for that title. And these two just went at it. They ripped each other apart in there. Hogan taking the win at the end, retaining that title. And really just solidifying the name of Hulk Hogan in the history books. He had beat Iron Sheik to become champion years prior. And now he was still champion, and he would still be champion for a little bit more while, another year or so, or two, before he would lose it. And he would regain it also many more times after that. But Hulk Hogan, at the time, you got to remember, people don't like him right now. People don't like Hogan. They look at, besides the racist shit that he said, let's put that aside for a second. I know you can't, but let's just put it aside for a freaking second. Take him as what he is, Hulk Hogan the wrestler, not, Terry the person. Hulk Hogan the wrestler, he came in there with Freddie Blassie as a heel. He started to make his rounds, AWA, so forth. Started to pick things up in WWE, beat the Iron Sheik, started to make a name for himself, but really got the crowd behind him. As a kid, he got you pumping. As an adult, maybe not so much, but as a kid, he got you going. When you heard his music, when it comes crashing down and it hurts inside, the whole place would just erupt. And everybody would be on their feet. Everybody had his merch. At the end of his match, all his poses, everybody just ate Hulk Hogan up. Randy Savage, he was another top star, and he was probably number 2 in the business at the time. And maybe on some levels, the same popularity as Hogan, just wasn't pushed enough. But Hulk Hogan was the man to be, and he was the man of WWE at the time. He was the face. And like I said, him versus Bundy, classic match for the title. This was WrestleMania 2. And, we will go on to WrestleMania 3 on another episode. Of course, I think, as I said, we're going to do 1 through 10 leading up to Mania. Maybe more. It all depends. But those are my favorite early on ones. But this was WrestleMania 2. I thank you for listening to my podcast about it. Please leave comments, questions, whatever you feel like. You want to discuss it, talk about it. What's your favorite matches? Who do you like? What did you like about it? Did you even like it? Did you watch it? Have you seen it? Anything goes here at the VSW. I'm your boy, the Versace Stoner. Thank you for tuning in. Versace out.